Hi everyone. Decided to do some maintenance on my K7 GSXR 750 and I thought I'd start doing a range of videos really for my own reference, but also maybe if anything can help you guys out there when you're doing similar work. So this is the bike. I've had it a couple of years. It's a track only bike now. When I first bought it I did ride it on the road a little bit, but I took it off as I got used to more track riding and decided I didn't want to use it on the road. It's seen a few offs. As you can see, the fairing on there is a bit mismatched. Some of it's from Chinese, some of it's original, some of it's been resprayed. I've actually got a race class kit coming for it, and I'll do a video of when I put that on as well. Last track day, I noticed some oil coming from what I believed was the clutch cover. I noticed a bit of spray around the casing, a few drips and some on my boot. So now's the time to fix it. So I'm just going to be doing a quick video of removing the clutch cover, replacing it with a new gasket and seeing how we go. As you can see, I've got some GB racing covers over the clutch cover. I can't recommend these enough. They're a fantastic product. On the offs I've had on the other side where the stator cover is, you can see where it's ground down a little bit, and that's just where the engine protector or the case protector has done its job and saved my engine covers. So I highly recommend, if you're going to use your bike on the track or even on the road, and you're a bit of a fast rider or you like to do crazy stuff, that you get some engine casing protectors for it, because it'll save you a lot of hassle. So anyway, let's get to it. First of all, I'll set the bike up ready to go, and then I'll do a slow removal of the existing gasket from the cover, and we'll see how we go. So before we get going with the removal, we'll just show you what I've got for the job. So I've got a brand new Suzuki OEM gasket, which was about $20 Australian, so nice and cheap. You need a 8mm socket, obviously with a socket wrench, to remove the cover bolts. I've got some Loctite blue, which I'll just use on the bolts when I put them back on. And I've also got some of this Permatex Ultra Black, which I'm going to use in a couple of points around the casing where it joins, just to give it a better seal. I've read a few reviews on this stuff, and apparently it's just as good as the expensive Suzuki lube or the Yamaha lube or any of those other gasket makers or joiners. So we'll see how we go with that, but I'm hoping for good things. It's got a good temperature rating, and it's for oil seals, etc., so it should be good. Okay, so first off, I'm not going to drain the oil. There's really no need for this job. So what I've done is I've put a small block of wood under the rear wheel, and obviously the bike's on its side stand, to get the oil away from this side of the bike and away from the cover and the clutch. So we'll go ahead and start removing the bolts, and see how we go. So using my 8mm socket and my wrench, I'm going to remove all these bolts around the casing, including the ones obviously with the GB covers on. These shouldn't be very tight. The factory's Torx specification's really low. We'll go over that when I put them back on, but they should be pretty easy to get off. If the casing's been off before and someone's done a half-assed job, they probably over-tightened them, so you might have a bit of trouble, but hopefully not. So I'll just loosen them all one by one. Okay, now we'll see if we can get these engine covers off nice and easy. Sometimes it helps to have a socket screwdriver or socket driver. So there's the first cover off. The bolts for the covers are actually longer than the stock bolts, so I'm just going to keep those with the covers to make sure I don't mix them up. Okay. Now we'll take off the other casing bolts. Make sure you keep these bolts together in a nice safe place so you don't lose them. There's nothing worse when you go to put stuff back together and you can't find a bolt. Okay, that's all those bolts off. So there you go, we'll keep those nice and safe. Got some lock away here on the filler cap. I'll just take off and move out of the way. Now it's time to see if we can get this casing off. It's the first time I've had to remove it, so we'll see if it's stuck or if it comes off quite easily. So here we go, it's coming off really easily. And there's a bit of a mess, obviously. And we've got the crankcase sensor in here, as you can see. So I think what we'll do is maybe take that off so we can keep it out of the way. Otherwise this is just going to hang here. So yep, I'll do that. Okay, so I've had a look at it and I've decided I'm not going to remove the sensor because even if I do, I'm then going to have to remove the rubber grommet at the top up here, which probably cause me more grief than I want because I'll then have to reseal it, and I'm not really sure how this comes out, so I'm not going to remove stuff that may give me heartache. So anyway, we'll remove the existing gasket, which is here. I'm not really sure where the damage is. There's a little spot at the bottom, I don't know if you can see that there, where the screw goes. That looks like it's maybe the suspect area, but the gasket itself is not in bad condition, but and the leak is tiny, but I just think it's a little bit warped, and the oil's obviously just managing to get through down the bottom, hence why I'm taking it off. So we'll just pull it off, and as you can see it breaks because it's been there for a while and it's been under pressure. Make sure we get it all off. Unfortunately, there are going to be little bits of gasket residue left over, and we're going to have to see if we can get those off. Obviously, if you don't get it all off, when you put it all back together, you're going to get a very good seal, which will probably cause more problems than we had to begin with. I think what I'll do, I'll go over it with a small amount or a very fine sandpaper or emery cloth, just to get those bits of gasket off that don't want to budge. So I'll pause the video and clean it all up, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so I changed my mind. I have removed the sensor because there was quite a bit of residue, gasket residue around the casing, and I don't want to risk it in the engine, obviously, because that wouldn't be good. So I've removed it and I've put it on my bench, and we'll work away at getting the old gasket off of it. Yeah, and then obviously when we put this back on, we'll have to use some sealant around the grommet to make sure we get a good seal. So here's the cover. As you can see, there's quite a bit of old gasket in spots around there, so I'm going to work away at getting that off as much as I can so we can get a nice snug fit when we put it back on. So I've cleaned up all the old gasket from the casing. As you can see, I started off using some very fine sandpaper or emery cloth, but it just wasn't enough to start lifting the old gasket. I think someone had used a bit of a sealing as well, which is obviously hard to get off, and I didn't want to scratch the casing. So what I actually ended up doing was using my Dremel with a really fine 240 grit on there, and I just used that to clean up the casing, just pressing very lightly around the edge to remove all that old gasket off there. And as you can see, it's come up pretty good. It's not perfectly smooth, you can't feel any imperfections with your fingers, but obviously it's never going to be as perfectly smooth as if it was machined in the factory, but I think it's good enough to have a seal when the gasket goes back on it. And we use a little bit of sealant around the joins as well. Now obviously this now means that there's a lot of old gasket and rubbish that's actually gone into inside the casing itself and mixed with the oil, as you can see. So now what I need to do is clean all that up. So what I'm going to do is take it indoors, put it in a mixture of water and just washing up liquid to get all that oil and rubbish out, give it a good clean up, and then let it dry, and I'll probably dry it off with a heat gun to get all the moisture out of it before I look at putting it back on the bike with the new gasket. So I'll go and do that and we'll move on. Cheers. in some soapy water. It literally took me 2 minutes. It's come up really good. There's nothing left inside, obviously, just apart from some water droplets. So I'll get the heat gun out and just dry that off and make sure there's no moisture left in there before we think about putting it back on the bike. But so far so good. It's all clean and dry now. I've let it dry naturally a bit, and also with the heat gun just to get any of that moisture away, and let it sit for a while, and now it's looking nice and clean and dry. You can still see some oil sitting in there, but that's fine, no problem at all. There's no metal, no dirt, no bits of gasket. It's all gone, so that should be fine to put back on the bike. I've also removed any small bits of gasket that were stuck to the engine itself, and obviously being very careful not to drop anything inside. That wouldn't be good at all. So I think now we're ready to have a go at putting it all back together and putting a new gasket on. So I'm gonna get ready to put the stuff back together now. Put in the new gasket and the new sealant. The Suzuki manual recommends to actually put some sealant around where the casing joins, which is 2 parts, just 2 small parts, which I'll show you. I don't think I'm actually going to put any sealant anywhere else. I don't think it's really necessary. Just making sure the gasket fits. It's an OEM gasket, so it's spot on. I'm sure other gaskets, non-Suzuki, original parts will be fine, but I don't know, when you're talking about $20 and trying to fix an oil seal or an oil leak, I think it's probably just a good idea to spend, if it's costs any more, which it probably doesn't, it's probably just a good idea to spend that little bit of extra cash and do it right. Okay, so as you can see, the new gasket is perfect, right size. So now what I'm going to do is I'll move the camera back over to the bike, and we'll put the sensor back on the casing, and then we'll start to fix this back onto the bike. I've replaced the clutch cover sensor, or the crank sensor, position sensor. Made the bolts nice and tight, or the screws nice and tight, obviously. Don't want them coming loose. So now I'm going to put in some gasket sealant around the rubber grommet for the sensor, and also in these 2 areas here, one up here and one down here. In the Suzuki manual it says to put sealant there, obviously because that's where the engine casing joins, so just so you don't get the oil running down in between the gaps where the engine casing comes together. So I'll do that. Might be a little bit tricky. And this sealant comes in a massive tube. I'm only going to be using a little bit, so hopefully I'll be able to keep it if in case I need it another time, but I have heard that it does go hard in the tube. Not too much. Okay, hopefully that should be enough for the grommet to go in. put a little bit around casing joiners. Okay, and next we'll put on the gasket. You can't really get this wrong in the position it needs to go. There's two dowels in place. It just slots over. So it makes it nice and simple. Put the casing back on. So there you go, I've put on the cover, and now what I'm going to do, I'll put on the oil filler cover, just so we don't get anything nasty dropping in there when I'm doing this. We're just going to put the bolts in. Not too tight, just to hold it in place. And then after about an hour we'll take the bolts out again, put some thread locker in, some Loctite thread locker, and tighten them down properly. So that's the casing protectors on first, and then we'll just put the rest of the bolts in. And we'll just do them up, snug them, not taut them. Just ready for that sealant to harden, which takes about an hour. And then we can come back and take them out again, put the thread locker on and torque them down. I think the torque's only about 10 newtons, so not very tight at all really. And obviously it's very important not to over tighten these because they're very easy to break. there we go. So we'll leave that, and then I'll come back and thread lock all the bolts on. And that's it really. So hopefully that's been of help to someone out there. It's not a difficult job. I think the most important thing is taking your time and making sure you clean up as you go, and getting all that old gasket off before you reseal it. Okay, cheers guys.